Apple's mobile operating system is one of the cornerstones of its business, and it's some of the most used software in the world. iOS 11 was announced at WWDC on the 5th of June 2017 alongside the release of Developer Beta. Following announcements made at Apple's special event, iOS 11 will be heading to general release on the 19th of September. Here we round up all of the latest news about Apple's newest mobile OS and break down its key features. Jump to latest news. Release date. Availability. Features. iOS 11 latest news 07/12/2017. Although iOS 11 installations got off to a slower start than iOS 10, the latest version is fast catching up, now running on almost 60% of devices according to Apple's App Store support page, running on 59% of devices as of the 4th of December. The same figures revealed iOS 10 is being used by 33% of devices, while only 8% are running older versions of the software. In comparison, iOS 10 was installed on 54% of devices last October according to MacRumors. Mixpanel said its own analytics showed iOS 11 was running on 55% of devices back in October, so there is some discrepancy between measurements. It's not surprising adoption has been so slow compared to older versions of iOS, with more issues than ever reported in the first months of its launch. The most recent, a springboard bug that crashed devices at 12:15 a.m. last Saturday, was fixed earlier this week, but even the fix to the bug caused more issues. The update was originally supposed to add support for Apple's new Pay Cash feature, but because iOS 11.2 was rushed out, the use-only feature launched on Tuesday instead. 05/12/2017. Apple has rushed out an update to address a crashing issue on the iPhone X, but inadvertently caused Face ID to break instead, according to 9to5Mac. The iOS 11.2 update to the iPhone X was issued after users reported the handsets crashed at 12:15 a.m. on Saturday morning, thanks to a flaw affecting Springboard, the application that manages the iOS home screen. But after installing the update, some users said they were presented with the messages Face ID is not available or unable to activate Face ID on this iPhone. It would seem the issue isn't as problematic as the Springboard flaw though, with users able to simply restart their device to get Face ID up and running again. The iOS 11.2 update wasn't due to come out just yet, but Apple was so concerned by the Springboard fault, it rushed through the new version, potentially neglecting to test it properly. However, Apple analyst Rene Ritchie seems to think the problem was caused by users changing the time on the clock before installing the update in the hope it would revive their crashed iPhone. If you changed your iPhone X date to avoid the Springboard crash, then updated to iOS 11.2, Face ID won't like the bad date and you'll need to reboot to make it happy again. Also remember to set your date time back to auto ASAP, he said on Twitter. 17,112,017. Apple has released iOS 11.1.2, which rectifies a problem that caused the screen on some iPhone X devices to become temporarily unresponsive in cold weather. The problem was reported over the past week after some users realized their device would freeze and fail to recognize touch inputs when suddenly exposed to cold temperatures, according to MacRumors. Outside and temperature hits about 1 degree Celsius to 30 degrees Fahrenheit. My iPhone XS display becomes working incorrectly. Some touches aren't recognized and some are not accurate at all. Problem solves itself after about 35 minutes of use or when I go back indoors, one post on the MacRumors forum said. Apple was quick to fix the issue, with the update coming just 1 week after complaints were reported. Apple's release notes also state that the update fixes an additional issue which caused the distortion of live photos and videos on the iPhone X. Another update, the iOS 11.2, is also in the works and plans to introduce Apply Pay Cash and incorporate faster 7.5W wireless charging on the iPhone X, 8, and 8 Plus, when it is rolled out to the wider public. The iOS 11.1.2 is currently available to download. 15,112,017. The latest release of iOS 11, iOS 11.2, has brought faster charging to the iPhone 8, iPhone 8 Plus, and iPhone X using key charging accessories. Using iOS 11.1.1, which was rolled out to fix problems with typing and the iPhones only supported 5 watts of charging power. However, the most recent update, which is currently being tested by select developers and other beta testers, will apparently support 7.5 watts, make charging faster if you want to use wireless charging accessories. There has been no official announcement by Apple regarding this new capability, save an earlier promise to increase charging capabilities at a later date. According to MacRumors, however, it received the tip-off from RAVPower, a company that makes accessories supporting the wireless charging standard for the new iPhone range. The website confirmed that after testing the update with 7.5 watt accessories, indeed, it was faster when using an accessory that supports 7.5 watts charging speeds, topping up a device from 46% to 66% in 30 minutes, compared to 60% in 30 minutes when using a 5 watt accessory. The website explained that it had tested the devices using real-world conditions with a case on the device and airplane mode not activated. However, it's important to note the iPhone's charging speed is still slower than many of the other key charge-engineable devices, which often support speeds of up to 15 watts. 16,102,017. If you find your iPhone's battery is draining faster than usual after installing iOS 11, you're not alone. Reports suggest that the update has seemingly sped up the time it takes for your iPhone to run out of battery. Quartz noted that because Apple has opted to enable background app refresh by default, it's causing iDevices to run out of juice much faster than they did on iOS 10. Background app refresh forces your device to check for changes in state to any of the apps running on your phone, even if they are not open. This means your device will be constantly sending and receiving data, draining the battery. To get over this rather frustrating problem, you're advised to turn off background app refresh by heading into your iPhone's settings menu, choosing General and then Background App Refresh. You can now select the apps you don't want to constantly check for changes. To boost your battery even more, you can also opt for your device to only download app updates over Wi-Fi, which will not only save some battery power, but will also cut down the amount of data you're using. Another top tip provided by Quartz is turning off the iPhone's auto brightness. The more it uses the light sensor to change the brightness of the screen, the faster your battery will disappear. To do this, head to the Settings menu, then choose General, Accessibility, Display, Accommodations greater than Auto Brightness. 13,102,017. Apple's newest operating system is now its most popular, as the majority of its customers are now using iOS 11. It's great news for Apple given that iOS 11 has only been officially available for a few weeks, and that users typically take much longer to migrate over to a newest operating system. Android Marshmallow, released in 2015, still dominates the market share for the platform, despite the fact that its successor, Android Nougat, has been available for over a year. Apple's iOS 11 has now been installed on 47% of devices, according to analytics firm Mixpanel, edging ahead of iOS 10's 46%, with iOS 9 or earlier still operating on 6.7% of devices. Although it's an impressive adoption rate, users have been slower to upgrade than they did with iOS 10 over the same release period. When last year's OS released, it took only 2 weeks for iOS 10 to become the most installed platform. Apple has already released a handful of minor bug fixes for iOS 11, including one that could drain the battery life of a device in less than 96 minutes. There's also the OS's first major patch in the works which, once it's available, will likely generate a sharp increase in the adoption rate. 26,092,017. iOS 11 drains batteries in less than 96 minutes. Apple users have reported seeing a drastic drop in application performance, as well as significantly faster battery drain after updating to iOS 11. London-based mobile security firm Wandera recently analyzed the battery performance of Apple's latest operating system, and found that an iPhone would completely empty in under 96 minutes. As a reference, it found that iOS 10 would typically last up to 240 minutes before needing a recharge. New functionality in iOS 11 could also be responsible for draining the life out of your phone, said Lionel Laporta, marketing manager at Wandera. Animoji and iPhone XS Face ID hardware use face scanning technology, relying heavily on the camera, which is a notorious battery sucker. The hardware enabling this advanced facial recognition in the iPhone X could be the reason there is such a dramatic difference in battery decay rate. However, the firm advises against rolling back to iOS 10.3.3, as the security benefits of iOS 11 far outweigh the hit to the battery life, as intolerable as it may be. Yet that's not the only problem plaguing iOS 11, as according to a number of angry Reddit posts, users are reporting frequent crashes or load failures on applications that were perfectly functional before the OS update. Safari, Reddit, ESPN, Yahoo, Spotify, as well as native text and music apps are all reportedly suffering from performance issues, in some cases taking over a minute to load or becoming unresponsive entirely. Ever since I upgraded, launching apps is an absolute chore, said one user. I never had a single issue with my 7 before last night, and now suddenly it's like this phone is stuck in quicksand. Another user reported that the iPhone's volume buttons would become unresponsive when using AirPods, and that playing music through an external system, such as a car radio, would produce skips in songs or poor audio quality. IT Pro has contacted Apple for comment on the issues. However, it is likely that the company will release a fix in its next update. iOS 11 release date and availability. The first iOS 11 beta was released in June at Apple's WWDC keynote. Following a total of 10 public betas, Apple has now set an official date of the 12th of September for its general release. This bucks the trend somewhat, as Apple usually makes the latest version of its OS immediately available for download when it reveals the latest generation of iPhone, in this case, the iPhone X. Instead, it will arrive a full week after the phone's debut. As with all iOS updates, iOS 11 will be freely available to Apple customers with compatible devices. This time around, the minimum supported devices are iPhone 5s and upwards, iPad mini 2 and upwards, iPad 5 and upwards, and all iPad Air and iPad Pro models. iOS 11 features. iOS 11 brings with it a number of new features, including both surface-level cosmetic tweaks and seriously meaty feature upgrades. There's a slew of updates, but here are the biggest things that Apple is introducing with its latest iOS version. Siri upgrade. Apple has improved its signature AI voice assistant for 2017's range of devices, making its male and female voices more expressive and natural, enabling them to adjust intonation and pitch as well as emphasis and tempo. It's now able to translate English words and phrases into Chinese, French, German, Italian and Spanish, and can offer more personalization based on use of Apple's Safari, News, Messaging and Mail apps, suggesting topics you search for on Safari when you're typing an email. For instance, a big new feature for iOS 11 is the inclusion of augmented reality, with iPad and iPhone developers encouraged to use the built-in camera and motion sensors with the new Arcade to layer virtual elements on top of the real world for a different take on apps and games. Camera improvements. Apple's upgraded portrait mode to take pictures with optical image stabilization, true tone flash and HDR, to make them better looking than ever. While memory movies can now play in both landscape and portrait modes, Apple is conscious of your storage space, so uses high-efficiency image file format to half the size of every photo you take on iPhone 7 and 7 Plus, and presumably on the iPhone 8, too. Apple Pay person-to-person payments. Apple Pay gets ever more convenient with iOS 11, now allowing you to not only pay over the counter with contactless technology, but pay friends simply by sending an Ifneto iPhone text using messages. For the first time, Apple is also allowing users to authorize payments using facial recognition, using its new Face ID technology. If voice is more your bag, you can use Siri to pay someone with the debit or credit cards you have stored in Wallet. Recipients can transfer the money from their Apple Pay cash account into the bank account, or use it to buy things using Apple Pay. Disable Touch ID. Apple has also added a feature that allows users to bypass the Touch ID fingerprint scanner in order to make a call to the emergency services. By tapping the Touch ID button 5 times on a compatible iPhone, iOS 11 will bring up the option to dial emergency services without the need to enter a password to make the call. The idea is the new feature is to ensure that iPhones can still be useful in situations where the user might be in danger, or if they are having difficulty dialing the emergency services, or if they are unconscious and someone else needs to use the smartphone to make an emergency call. Furthermore, the 5 rapid taps disable Touch ID and revert into requiring a password to be tapped into the handset in order to activate it, a useful feature in situations where the user may be forced to unlock the phone using Touch ID, for example by authorities seeking to make people unlock their phones with a fingerprint in order to access their data. The fingerprint scanner will then be disabled until the user puts in the password, which will then switch Touch ID back on. Essentially, the additional feature adds another privacy option into the security suite of iOS 11.